Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the May Azure User Group, Brisbane. Got a great session for you today. Before we get into it, just a few things. First of all, big thank you out there to our sponsors. So without these guys, none of this would be possible. Notify are very, very generous. They bundle the food and all the alcohol and everything, and Microsoft for the venue. So thank you very much for these sponsors. They're amazing. Being a community group, we'd love to hear from you. We've got a bunch of opportunities open at the moment. So if you have some Azure experiences that you'd like to share, it doesn't have to be latest and newest features. It's just, what are you using? What works for you guys? That's what we want to hear. It's like, what are your experiences? What do you find valuable? Probably not what you don't find valuable, but keep it to the positive. We'd love to hear from you, so reach out. We've got an email address down there. Flick us an email. We can absolutely slot you in. We've got plenty of opportunities this year, so we'd love to hear from anybody. A few updates. There's not as many. I think as we come up to build, we'll see a few more things drop. But anyway, starting off, AKS, we've got outbound standard V2 NAT gateway has gone into preview. So anyone who's using outbound NAT, it's pretty cool, but it's not as HA as this product. So this product here runs across the zones and gives you HA and pretty decent outbound connectivity. So monitor AKS applications with OLTP and Azure Monitor. So we've seen a whole bunch of stuff come through Azure Monitor of recent times as we're uplifting into that open telemetry stack. So this is just a new one that's now available for AKS. Who here is using AKS? Few people? Okay. And we've got a keen AKS person right here. If anyone has any AKS questions over there, just a hint. Minimum billable object size on cool tiers. So this is just uplifting that minimum block of that unit that things are being billed at cool tiers. This is kind of like the unhappy slide. The next slide is a happy slide. So keep that in mind. So we've got a minimum object size, but now we have Azure Blob Smart Tier. So Azure Blob Smart Tier is a new storage tier. You no longer have to worry about this stuff. So that's what I want to hear. It's like, is it simple? Yes. It's going to do it for you. It's going to move your objects around and give you the lowest price. So that's what I like to hear. You do have a monitoring charge that's per 10,000 objects in your storage account of 4 cents. It's pretty small. But it'll guarantee that based on that rationale, you're going to have a very cost-effective storage approach. Azure Cosmos DB, dynamic data masking. So those of you that have used SQL, you've seen dynamic data masking in SQL for many, many years. Well, now the dynamic data masking has gone GA for Cosmos. So that's pretty cool. And we've got a new DDoS rule set for front door. So not the talk for tonight, but front door is kind of like the alternate product in that space. Possibly not the cheaper product. So, but for those of you who have got the WAF add-on, not cheap, you've now got a new rule set that can prevent DDoS attacks. Container Network Insight Agent for AKS has gone into public preview. So AI powered, you can start like using those prompts that we've all become very familiar with of the last couple of years and start getting insights and information Azure Functions Durable Task Scheduler consumption. So previously that was only available on the premium dedicated function stack, but now for the consumption stack, we've got that going now GA. So that's been around for quite a while now, a couple of years now. It's pretty cool if you're using Azure Functions. It's now available on the consumption SKU. All right, so an event that you're probably going to see more and more of. Keep your eyes open for this. You can sign up now. You can start getting some info. That's coming, and I think Bernie, next event we're going to do some build focused activities. Yeah. So it's going to be cool. Don't worry. Don't have a confused look on your face. It's going to be awesome. Awesome. And so some resources that we got Slack, we got YouTube, we got some training resources and some blogs. And tonight, without any further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Pacifique. So in this session, it's all about Traffic Manager. So DNS-based solution that manages load balancing. So Pacifique is a software developer and a tech enthusiast, also passionate about developing software solutions, exploring cloud, finding simple, efficient ways to complex challenges. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Pacifique.
Okay, sorry. This one. Oh, thank you, Damien. Let me just turn this on. Should come on now. Okay, that's not good. There we go. Hello again. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming tonight. So before I actually dive in, I just want to ask a quick question. Who here has pretty much heard about Azure Traffic Manager, or who knows what? Okay, thank you very much. And who has used it in, let's say, in a deployment or in a real production? Oh, a lot of people. Okay, for those of you who know what it is or have used it in the past, I hope the value today is the deployment strategy. And if this is your first time, I'll make sure that I explain it from the beginning before I dive into the architecture side of it. Okay. Have you ever had a release where the code was working and was ready? The testing was done and the checklist was really prepared, but everyone in the team felt a little bit nervous? Yes, that was our situation. The risk was not only whether the code worked, the risk was the maintenance window itself. And during that time, everyone in the team is watching the clock. The support is also waiting. User may be affected, and the business wants the system back as soon as possible. That, for me, was the moment I realized we have a problem. The deployment risk is not only a code problem. It is a timing problem, a coordination problem, and of course, a confidence problem. Now, I want to show you how that looks like for us before we change the process. Our old production deployment window was about 4 hours. 4 hours. I know that may sound normal in some environment, but for us was too much. We are a small team trying to earn trust in a market with bigger competitors. And we all know when you're trying to build customer confidence, every long outage feels expensive. So the problem was not that we were careless. In fact, we were very careful. But the work was happening in the wrong place. Too much important work happened during production maintenance time. And to understand why it took so long, we need to look at our old deployment checklist. This is just a summary, actually, of what we had. You know, the first thing everybody does, I guess, is to notify the user. We all do that, right? This thing gonna happen, gonna release on this specific day. And then we back up the production database and dependencies. And do the normal things. Deploy the files, update the schema, migrate all the configuration, and eventually you run the smoke test. As you can see, each item there makes sense. I would not remove backup. I would not remove testing. I would not even remove the careful validation. So the issue was that all these activities were grouped into one single large production event. So the maintenance window became really heavy. That's for each deployment we had, everyone in the team have to be very careful and perfect at the same time. And that is not a good combination, if you ask me, I guess. So naturally, I started looking for better technical answer. So the first answer I looked at seriously was Kubernetes. I heard about it from a friend who works in the banking. It's a good friend of mine I went to uni with. And I proposed, actually discussed some of the problems we're facing. And I said, what about Kubernetes? What is it? Okay, I went, learned the basics about it, installed Minikube on my local machine, built a small proof of concept, and even went and presented the idea to my team to convince them to adopt it. The problem is Kubernetes was really powerful. It can help with orchestration, scaling, rolling deployment, self-healing, and many other good things. But when we looked at our problem, Kubernetes was too much. It was too expensive for our situation. Imagine a startup, we don't even have enough money. Too complex again for the small team that we had. In fact, I was the only one who knew what it was. And it solved so many problems that we needed. That led us to a simple idea. Perhaps we did not need to move the entire platform. What we needed was just a simple, better traffic switch. This actually was the key shift in our thinking. We did not need a new platform immediately. What we needed was a way to prepare a production-like environment, test it, and then move traffic to it in a controlled way. So Azure Traffic Manager became really interesting to me because it's the DNS-based. It's not trying to run our application. It's not trying to replace our deployment process. It only helps decide which endpoint the user should reach. Now, let me just slow down and explain to you what Azure Traffic Manager does. Azure Traffic Manager, as you can see, it works at the DNS level. So when the user enters your application URL or address, what it does, first of all, the DNS resolution happens. Next, well, the feature that we're using, the Traffic Manager, it takes part or participate in this process by returning the endpoint that should be used. That's essentially what it does. It can choose the endpoint based on the routing method you have and the endpoint health. For example, it can prefer one endpoint over the other. It can split traffic either by weight or priority. It can route based on the performance, assuming you have so many endpoints. It can also route based on geographic location. So it pretty much works like load balance as well. So assuming you want a certain user to access specific resource somewhere on the planet, you can actually instruct Traffic Manager to tell, oh yeah, people from London should only reach this particular endpoint. In a simpler word, the Traffic Manager answers the question, which endpoint should user go to? So furthermore, it's also important for me to explain what Traffic Manager doesn't do, just to avoid the confusion. So first of all, we all need to understand that the Traffic Manager is not a reverse proxy. It's not an Azure application gateway. It's not the Azure front door. And it does not inspect every HTTP request. So after the DNS returns the endpoint, the browser or the client or you, the user who is connected, want to access certain resource from an application, you connect directly to that endpoint. So the Traffic Manager is not somewhere in the middle carrying all the traffic. And the simple analogy I can give you guys is, you can think of it as a road sign, I guess. What it does is just to tell the driver which road to take. It does not carry the cars. So the Traffic Manager tells the client which endpoint to use. All the application traffic, whatever, it doesn't know even what's really going on. So I guess with that foundation in mind, let's talk about the routing method that we chose. As I explained earlier, the Traffic Manager has several routing methods. And for our case, we chose priority because it was the easier to reason about based on the problem that we had. The model is simple. Endpoint 1 is preferred. If disabled or unhealthy, the Traffic Manager can return another endpoint. For deployment, this matches our thinking. So current production is active. Temporary production is prepared, and we decide when to promote it. So during a stressful deployment, let me tell you guys, a simple mental model matters a lot. So if a release is already high pressure, your traffic switching model should not be hard to explain. That's why you need to pretty much understand this model. Now let's compare the old architecture and the new one. Before the change, the production was doing two jobs. It was serving the users, and it is also the place where we performed all the deployment. That implies the customer traffic and the deployment work were happening on the same road. So if something took, let's say, longer than expected, the outage grew. Sometimes we could just go into 6 hours. And at the end, something went wrong, we roll back. It's a waste of time. Anyway, again, if something fails, as in some case, what we have experienced in the past, the rollback used to happen under pressure. And this is the reason why I use the road analogy. We were trying to repair and rebuild the road while people still depending on it. So the new model, which we adopted, was to prepare a second road first and then ship people there. So I can pretty much draw somewhere here. Our first model was something. Oh, can I use this?
No, that's not a whiteboard.
Okay. I saw the Wi-Fi. Anyway, I hope you have the mental picture of what I'm trying to say. Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah. That wasn't clear. I wanted to it's fine. I guess you guys have a mental picture of what I'm trying to say. So the new model is to try to build the second road fast and make sure it's ready. Now, I guess I want to draw something, but this one. Oh, that's okay. I'm going to use that. Thank you very much. So, as I said earlier, our new model was to build a second road. So after the changes, we used a second production lock environment. So you can call it like temporary production. You can also think of it as pre-production environment, which is prepared for promotion. So the slow work happens there, files, dependencies, configuration, schema, all sort of thing, and then testing all happen there. Normal users are not using it yet, so we have enough time to be careful. Now, when the prepared environment is ready, the final production event becomes much smaller because we're no longer doing everything during the outage. We are mostly changing where the user go. So to make this clear, we use two traffic manager profiles. As you can see that one. We use two traffic manager profile because we wanted some kind of a clear separation of concern. So the production traffic manager profile is the one normal user go through. So it has the current production endpoints active. It also knows about the temporary production endpoint, but that endpoint is not active for normal user until switch time. The prep, or you can call it a staging traffic manager profile, is simple. It only has the current temporary production endpoint. And that gives us testers and developers a stable route for validating any prepared release before the promotion. So if we need to change which environment is the current temporary production on this temp profile, what we simply do, we just update the prep profile manually as part of our release cycle. And remember, it's only being used for testing and for us developers to pretty much validate what we're building or we try to ship. So the important idea here is that the user traffic and the release validation traffic are separate. Now we can walk through the new deployment phases. So now we have got the two profile. We have our model ready. Now we have new way of deploying the release, right? So the first one is the full deployment to temporary production. So this is where we do all the normal production style work. So we deploy the files, update the dependencies and database schemas. We apply configuration and make sure the application starts correctly. The difference is that the normal users cannot reach this environment. So that changes the pressure. But remember, we still care about the quality, but we are not racing the same production outage clock. We have enough time. And this is actually where the strategy starts to pay off. We have not removed work. We have simply moved the slow work to a safer place. So after the deployment to temporary production, we do not switch immediately. We test first. And that leads us to phase 2. Phase 2 is not just some login into the app and see if it works. We validate the important flows, the integration, the configuration, the data, the background jobs, the health endpoint, and anything that has caused issues in the past. So if we find any problem, we fix it while users are still on the old production environment. That's the big benefit. The problems are discovered before the final outage window. And I always like to say, a release must earn the promotion. So we are not promoted it because actually we are tired. We are promoted everything because all the checklists are clean. So once the prepared environment is ready and clean, and we have validated everything, we go to the live production preparation now. Phase 3 now is the actual production environment, the one, the AT, the Azure Traffic Manager profile, the production one is actually accessing. So we first back up while the user is still using it. So we back the entire production while it's running. And then we only apply changes that are backward compatible. So backward compatibility means the current production can still run even after the database changes. For example, adding new tables or nullable columns, it is much safer than renaming existing column that the application still uses. So this is one of the most important part of the whole strategy. The traffic switching is easy, pretty much. But the database compatibility is a big risk. So if the old and the new app cannot both tolerate the database state, the switching becomes really dangerous. So we have to ensure things are really in great condition. Now, the final maintenance window can be short. Remember, we've prepared the temporary production. We moved pretty much everything from our development to the temp production. And then we have updated some of the database, but remember, it's always backward compatibility on the database the live production is using. And now we are going now to the actual release so that the user can access the new features. Phase 4 is the switch time now. This is the part that user can feel. So we have to really be careful and make it as short as possible. So we take a short control maintenance window, and then we stop the relevant app path, and then we change the traffic status or priority. Afterward, we connect the promoted environment to the production dependencies and database, and then run smoke test immediately. At that point, the temporary production environment becomes the active production environment. The previous production environment becomes the inactive temporary production environment. After that, we can now update the prep traffic manager profile manually so that it points to the current temporary environment for the next cycle. So in our case, This reduced the visible maintenance window from about 4 hours to 4 minutes. And the reason is simple. Most of the work was already done. This is why the results changed so much. So the visible outage moved from hours to minutes. And this actually what most people will remember, but I want to be clear and precise about what's changed. So the deployment work did not disappear. We still backed up. We still tested. We still checked all the configuration. The difference is that most of that happened before the production switch. I strongly believe that a good deployment strategy does not only make people type faster. It changes when risk happens and how much risk is inside the live window. Also note that the checklist also changed a lot. Our old checklist was one long production event. The new checklist now is staged, so we just stage it. So the first thing we do in our new checklist is to deploy to the current temporary production. Second, we test and approve, and then we back up production. Fourth, we apply the database compatibility. Remember, it's backward compatibility only there. The fifth is we switch the traffic, and finally, we keep the rollback ready in case we mess up somewhere along the way. This is important because architecture alone is not enough. The checklist is what turns the architecture into a repeatable process. So you have to make sure all these processes are well rehearsed and understood by everyone in the team, specifically those involved in the switching process or the deployment process. Now, let's be honest about what worked well and what still needs care. The first benefits actually we had about using the traffic manager and why we chose it was the cost. This was way cheaper than the full platform migration. The second benefit was the simplicity. The team, everyone actually, could understand the model, prepare, validate, and switch whenever actually they need, whenever they are ready. The third benefit was the rollback. So the production environment remained known and available until the new release was accepted. Otherwise, we have enough time for testing. So we can catch any issue and fix it before the actual switch time or production deployment. Last but not least, the rehearsal. So because the process was clear, we could practice and improve the checklist. Now, the important is there are things that we need to respect to make sure this process is successful. DNS caching really matters. So even if the traffic manager changes the answer, some client may keep an earlier answer until the TTL expires, the time to leave expires. Database compatibility matters. So this is actually one of the biggest technical risks in many deployment. So you have to be really careful while you're doing all the backup database compatibility. Environment drift. If the temporary production environment is not like the actual production, I guess the main production environment, the testing can give us some false confidence. So we have to make sure they're at the same level. We need to do health check as well. So a shallow, like 200 OK is not enough. So we have to make sure all the dependencies are not broken. And one thing that I like, I guess, my favorite part is the discipline. A simple architecture alone as this one can still fail if people can improvise during the switch or during the whole process. So you have to really be careful and be disciplined about all this process. So where does this approach fit best? I think that's one question that everyone is asking right now. Well, simple. The strategy best fits where you already have tool, or you can create an actual or a production-like environment. It also fits if your main pain is a long release window, something that we had. And what you need is a controlled promotion model. It also fits for a small team because the mental model is not complicated. So it's simple. It doesn't, but remember, actually, simple doesn't mean careless. As I mentioned in the early part, we have to be disciplined. So check all the environment, the database, health check, and rollback process. So all this needs discipline. And here are the things that I will not pretend this is enough, actually. This strategy does not replace the CI/CD. You still have your own CI/CD. It does not replace monitoring, too. It does not replace good database design and migration. And it does not replace secret management. It also doesn't replace Azure front door or application gateway, where you need specifically some kind of layer 7 routing or WAF or perhaps TLS termination. The traffic manager solves our specific problem because our need was some DNS-based endpoint selection and a control management where we can just switch whenever we are ready to deploy. That's all needed. So now the model is clear. I want to do a short demo just to show how the whole thing works. This pretty much, I've got a few apps here actually. I'm trying to simulate the two environments, the production. So I've got some code here. Okay, I don't have a cursor on the mouse. It's pretty hard here for me. Anyway. So I kind of simulated pretty much the entire process here with, you can see in the code that we have the prep app, we can call it the temporary, actually, I should have called it temporary application. We have the prod app. The prod app is pretty much what I can assume the actual production. So I think it's running on my local machine right now. Okay. So if I go localhost, so my localhost running right now should be 0.2.0.2. Okay, this one. Okay, it's not running. Let's start it now. Okay. Okay, here we go. Actually, it's a wrong port. Correct one. 4102. So you can actually say the production one it's actually on port 4101, and the prep one is on ports 4101, 4102. There you go, it goes live. So that is the the prep one, we can put as a staging for now, which is currently running on my local. And this is, okay, it's not reaching this. Very strange. 101. I want to make sure it's running my local before I deploy it. Okay. I know it's pretty embarrassing when something like that happens.
You rehearsed this before.
Right. That broad. Okay. There we go. So the production is running. So the production is running on my local. And as you can see, the user interface is pretty much different from the staging one. We've got this small picture here. If you see, we've got an additional photo somewhere here. You see that? So you can assume that's pretty much our staging. So that's the second, I guess, production environment that I've created. In my local environment is like our development, I guess, for now. But initially, I guess in phase one, I had only the production. So I created the temporary, which is the prep one. Okay. Now, if we also go somewhere here, I want to show something. If we go to Azure prod, if you go there on your local, on your phone, I guess, if you go to prod, that's pretty much, you just go there, I guess, yeah. And so we've got a few things you can see here. So a few data, well, you can view a table here of random data. You can say create data here. Then some few prompts here. What are you grateful for today? What's the finest release moment we have seen? So if you go there, what are you grateful for? Just loving this. Okay, some random things. And if you go on your mobile, you also be able to view what I've just done. So the demo I'm trying to do here is pretty much before the Azure Traffic Manager. I'm trying to demonstrate pre-Azure Traffic Manager. And the second one, if you also go, just change this. Rep. Okay. We have also deployed our second environment so a user can access it. Now, all this pretty much, they have their own DNS record. You can see here. Yeah, so I've got pretty much some DNS record for each environment that I have here. So what I want to do now next is to simulate the entire Azure Traffic Manager where we can switch and decide which endpoint should be our prod. And when user access our prod URL, they should just get the latest data pretty much from the prep. Okay. Does anybody have any question up to this point? Please.
Are you using a reverse proxy like an app gateway or something?
No. Oh, yeah.
Any proxy server that you have?
Pardon?
Any proxy server that?
No, I'm not using any proxy. I'm just using the app service actually to deploy the application. Okay. And then pretty much map the URL, just create a DNS record.
My question was that when you got figured out this problem, it must be related to something in your production environment, right?
Yes.
So are you using App Gateway for your architecture?
No, we're not using that. That's what we're saying. We're using Azure Traffic Manager to just switch to decide what the user, which resources the user should actually access. That's basically what it is.
I've actually got a plethora of questions and so on, but one that typically came across in the past with these types of things with blue-green deployments and so on is that in testing beforehand, you're typically HTTPS.
Yep.
So your certificates, do they have subject alternative names for both prod and pre-prod so you can flip over?
Yeah, they can just, the traffic manager, as I said earlier, really doesn't care. It's not like gateway, like
yeah,
the front door where it's actually encrypt some HTTP content at.
Yeah, no, my question wasn't really in relation to traffic. Traffic manager will refer you to the appropriate endpoint.
Yeah, it's just like a road sign. It doesn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but you pointed out there the prep and the URL, so that prep site is actually exposed to the internet, and if you've got the right the CNAME or whatever, you would hit it.
Yep.
So what I'm alluding to is that typically you have the cert for the website deployed on the website. So if you're hitting the prep website with a URL with the word say prep in it.
Yeah, it's easy to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the certificates that you have
will be from the prep environment.
But when you switch over, you would have to have. So how does the subject alternative name of the SSL?
Doesn't care. It does happen at the application at its own application. It doesn't really. The traffic manager actually doesn't authenticate anything.
My apologies. So again, I can understand the traffic manager doesn't care.
Yep.
But your certificate, when the browser does the negotiated on the site, you previously put before you were testing, you put in say prep. So your browser in the negotiate with the site would say SSL negotiate how I think your blah blah prep.
The DNS pretty much resolve that fast. Then traffic manager points to the correct endpoint.
Yeah, okay. I haven't explained myself properly. That's all right. I'll pick somewhere else in.
Okay, is there a specific slide where you saw this?
No, it was just as I said in the past, exposing the to be deployed, accessing it. You used to have to ensure that you had the production's SSL cert. So tricks would be you do a host file or something like that would get to. So the negotiate, you wouldn't get a certificate error in the sense that
No, you're not getting it. Yeah, there's no certificate error because the certificate, all the resources are still on the main environment.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is to make some changes actually on my local. So I want to make some changes on my local, first of all, on the prep. So remember, we're trying to prepare our prep source code here, which is this one. I want to just make some changes on HTML. I'll put a picture here. Should be here. So okay, this one, I believe. Yep. So I want to add a small photo here. I just want this photo here. What does it call? We call it money image dot JPEG. I guess just have to leave. Okay. I can just leave that actually there. Doesn't matter. Just a demo. And if we go to our local here, just want to refresh it. So this is our local prep. Want to show the local prep here first. Our local prep now have got some more changes. So we're trying to simulate the changes you're doing or you're preparing the pre-production environment. I also want to make some changes here on its backend, I guess. I want to add additional. Okay, they're pretty much there already. So you can actually compare now the prep on locally, which is pretty much the development. It's different. Come here. So additional option here. The user also have changed. The user interface have changed. Meanwhile, the production one on the local is still pretty much the same as the one running or the one user accessing. So what I'm going to do next is to create Azure Traffic Manager. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create Azure Traffic Manager somewhere here. To access that, you just select profile, manager profile. And we're going to create two of them. Okay, we need to have the resource group, support group already. Then I can call it something like Brisbane Azure group, Brisbane user group, ATM. Oh, I think that works.
I don't think it likes underscores.
Yeah.
So,
Spend ATM. Road. Remember, we want to routing method to be priority best. Then you'll just go create the view. Try to validate it. Then create. Now, this is our production Azure Traffic Manager profile. So we can go there. Then to update your configuration where you can change the routing method and add anything that you need so that your application can be accessed. So you go to configuration here. So the priority is still there. The DNS time, as I said earlier, you need to make sure that actually you choose the appropriate the timestamp, the time, and then the protocol, which was HTTPS, just been a secure connection. The port for that. And this is very important. So you need the health check or the health endpoint somewhere. The traffic manager should also ping for access so it can give you the actual health of your application. So I have it already. I'll show you. It's got health. Correct. You also need the expected status code. Just have to accept. You can pretty much 200 is pretty much the default value, but you can also add range, the probing interval, the tolerate time, but this pretty much a default value. You can leave it that way, and then you pretty much save it. After that, you go down here. You don't need to do much, where you actually assign your endpoint. Add one of the endpoints here. And you can have as many as you want, actually. So I'm deploying using Azure resources, but you can still use external resources where you add some kind of URL to accept the actual domain of the application which you want your Azure Traffic Manager to access. So in my case, all the resources that I have here are within Azure, so I just have to choose that. I can call it the first endpoint is our production environment. Call it something like, or just call it the same. I'll have here prod something here. Or it's pretty much I'm using app service. The choose one, the production one is this one. Then I enable it. At this point, once it's deployed on Azure Traffic Manager, I can pretty much enter the Traffic Manager profile URL and to just go and return the actual production. So just wait. So it checks it monitors actually the health based on the path that I gave it to. So in the meantime, I can still add my pre-production endpoint. Remember, I said the actual production job has both endpoint, but only the one the user can access is active. The pre-production, which is prepared for the next release, is still there, but it's disabled, and only in the next cycle that we turn it on when everything is ready. So it's still also a Azure endpoint. We can call it the same actually, just to go there. Struggling here with the cursor of the mouse. Prep. Then it's a service. You can also actually enter the IP address of your virtual machine, anything, so it's acceptable. And then we choose the target, should be the pre-production. Okay, I think I might have. No, I want to see this one is, okay, I think I might have messed up with the endpoint. Let me just confirm
I think
this.
the first one was prep. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's prod.
Can it,
So let's name you.
yep. All right, you can just, should be prod. This one. Yeah, you have to be really careful, as I said. Discipline matters. Now change that. Then we go back here. Our endpoint. Now we just have to make sure it's prep now. Go up service. Shows it's right here. And we don't have to enable it, just to disable it for now. Okay, now we have two endpoints. We're trying to promote this to simulate the entire process here. Enable still checking, or it's ready. So now we can see use this. It's not yet propagated, but we can see use this to access your production. You can see use this. Oh, this is our production. According to the production, if somebody can actually, if anybody can connect, because the next thing I'm going to do is pretty essential, because we want to see how, we want to check the integrity of data when we switch. So if you can just go to create data and just say something you're grateful, I guess, about, or anything funny about it, I want to see. Otherwise, you don't have to, but it's just what it is. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to deploy now. So I have the changes on my local. So you can assume the local as the development. So I've made some changes on my prep on my local. So I want to deploy the prep fast. But before that, I think we need to create our prep Azure profile, Azure Traffic Manager profile, and link our prep production deployment there. What I'm going to do is come here. Let's come here. So we don't want to create a second one, put it under the same resource group. We could just call it the same as this one. Yeah. Prep. And the routing method is pretty much priority. After that, we create. So while this is creating, I'm going to deploy the change that I've made on my log. While the deployment is happening, what I'm going to do, I will go to our prep ATN, reconfigure it. One HTTP request, yes, change the port. I can just leave everything. I need to add. Then we save. We've saved, we add now our prep endpoints here. So endpoints, can call it just prep. Basement Azure user group. Service. So prep. We leave it active too. At this point now, our prep, let me just have a look. We've pretty much done all the stages to deploy it to the, we try to simulate the entire phase. We have made some changes on the back end and the data in the front end, and we deploy everything to our prep production environment. Okay, and if you come here, grab that, then that should also load. But remember, we've only made changes to the traffic manager, but our old application, they still have DNS record pointing to them. The users know nothing about the Azure traffic manager URL. In fact, it's not secure. So we want now to update our DNS record with the new traffic manager. It's the traffic manager which routes them the correct application. But we haven't switched yet. We just make some changes.
So what, this goes back to when it says not secure, as in that the certificate is.
The certificate, yeah. So it goes through a different URL, yeah.
Right. So if you looked at the certificate, you would have the. Certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we don't want to. So we want to just take it to our DNS registry, which pretty much provide the certification for me. So I think this answers your question.
Yes.
So yeah, when the user access now our URL, it goes first to the registry, which provides the certification. Right now, it goes to Microsoft, which doesn't provide a certificate for this.
Yeah, that was what I was getting at.
Okay.
I think that's what I was getting at. Yes, your answer was.
But I'm not using like a big infrastructure such as a virtual machine where actually I'm providing myself with all the certificate. That's right. But if I had, it's pretty much could have been safer. Okay, now I've got these two. I just need to just change it here. I need to just copy here. I need to go back and forth. Just copy the prep one. Oh, this is it. Just need to move the app. Need to remove this. Okay. Finally, I need to also access the prod one. This one. But we still maintain the old URL. We haven't changed anything. So in the next cycles, you don't need to do all this. What you do is just in the traffic margin. So this is pretty much a demo for setting up everything from scratch. Okay, so now you can add access through the actual your traffic manager or the URLs. Actually, we no longer need this. Now, if you okay. Now, once you type that, it just goes through the traffic managers. Remember, we haven't switched yet, and the traffic manager went to that endpoint. That's pretty much what's happening now. The same for our preps. The same thing. When we go, it's just go to traffic manager, and the traffic manager, remember we say it's pretty much like a roadside, just directs to the correct endpoint. The next thing we want to do is pretty much is the switching. Remember, we have deployed already. If you have a look here, our prep has the latest value, and we can assume this is pretty much what you want to give the user. So what we need to do is a simple thing. First, we need to switch. Remember, we need to make sure that this prep connects to the actual database the production is using, because it has its own database. So you can pretty much confirm fast. You can see here, I've got somewhere here, if you see prep here, it says prep DB. I haven't changed everything. It's prep DB. See prep DB. So what I'm going to do is just switch rights connect. So what I'm doing, okay, deploy prep but connects to the actual production database.
I was going to ask that. So you do a conscious change of the connection string just before, so you're not using the same database the whole time.
Yeah, I can pretty much done backup too, so I can backup. So I can go back to rollback to have command file. Deploy. Which what is command pretty much? I have to automate everything because it's a lot and we don't have enough time. So yeah, so what I'm doing here, just okay, deploy and switch the current prep to use the actual production database. And you see where we're going here? So what we're doing here now, we want to connect prep, which, because we are the only one we're going to use that. So at this point, the prep will connect to the production database, which is just not a database actually. It's here. Just some CSV file with all the data that I'm showing. I don't want to make it complex than it already is. So the prep environment or URL, it still connect to the production database. The actual production as well, the one user is still have reference to the both databases. And at the end, we just have to switch the Azure Traffic Manager. Okay, we just wait. Haven't changed the URL, still prep. I want to see if it's finished. Yeah, I think it's done. Refresh now. Take some time. DB, okay, that's not good. Caching some sort. See. I want to make sure it's the same as this one, because if you say this, it says prod DB. That's the main. Nothing is broken. It's here. Yep. The prep Azure app is deployed with, okay, that's DB. Good, it's taking longer. So in the meantime, while it's taking longer, we just move to switching now. So we can assume up to this point, the prep is up to date. It has pretty much all the user interface updated. And the database in the backend has been updated. If you see here, I don't know if it's going to load again. Yeah, it's here. See here? The prep now has the preps there, probably yes. And you can see here on the backend, I add some random additional, our initial production has, if you come in our initial production here, I want to show you something here, initial production here, somewhere here, prod has got only just two options, I guess. Yeah, they both connect to the same database. And now we're going to the switch time. The switch time is pretty much simpler. What we do is just we go to our actual ATM. We go to our endpoints here. And we just disable this. Then enable this. And on our prep Azure Traffic Manager profile, we just have to update it manually to prepare for the next release cycle. That's essentially pretty much the whole process here. Now, if we now go to actual prep, it's going to take some time. Oh, prod, what is prod?
From last time.
That from last, okay. So this is the prod. I haven't refreshed yet. Anyway, when I refresh and no, just as no pictures on the front end. And when the user just make sure it's going to take some time for. Yeah, I just need to refresh this sometime. You don't need to refresh because we have cache busting. So anyway, user won't feel anything. But I have to make something Okay. Something is happening, something is not wrong, it's not good. Let's take some time. Let me fix. We want to inspect our app service here.
So potentially it's just your local cache you did.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the refresh. It's the refresh the command line.
IP config // DNS.
Flash, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flash all, he's on a Mac.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
The Mac.
Flash all.
Okay.
Could be flashable.
Yeah.
Yeah, flash all.
And Dell started with it.
Oh,
Once it's
what do you mean?
web, take longer. I hate this. It should come online in time soon, I suppose. So the idea, I guess, is simple here. Just waiting for it to run. Okay, it goes through DNS. Like this at all. Let me just, this is not time to debug, but anyway, there's some DNS resolution here happening. I don't know why. In the port traffic, some binding. I mean, this should actually happen automatically. You don't need to touch anything, but it just gives me a little bit of headache. Anyway, so the idea is pretty much simple. And if you were living long enough, that's the demo time. Once I'll refresh again. But anyway, the demo is pretty much a little bit longer than I expected, but some of the key lessons I guess to learn here is you have to prepare safely, you have to switch deliberately, and you need to keep the rollback ready. So if you guys could remember 3 things, make sure you remember this. Just move the risk earlier, make sure as we've done. So you do the slow work and uncertain work before the live outage window. Secondly, I guess to keep the switch very small. So the final production event should contain only the step that must happen at the end. So you don't want the whole thing happen. So as you've seen the demos, you just want to switch. That's the only one thing. You don't want to go through the entire process again. Now switch after you have validated your pre-release environment is ready. You just need to do the switching. And last but not least, I guess, to make sure you keep the rollback as boring as possible. Well, you want it to feel dramatic. And that's pretty much all, I guess. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please.
You put a 60-second TTL on the
Yeah.
So while you're running before that, typically it's using 3600 or longer periods because otherwise every 60 seconds DNS servers would be coming back to you again and so on. Do you keep it at 60 or do you have it as a long time and say a day before or something you drop it back to 60 or just leave it at 60 altogether?
So honestly, I think shorter is better given the way the architecture is. You don't want to keep a lot of things cached in your browser.
Yeah, it's just probably etiquette in
That's one of the issues.
having
That's one of the issues we are facing here. I guess we set up and
Tune it down and then tune it back up later.
you can still change it if you want.
I think that for like traffic manager, it is designed to be fast fluxing. So I think having it at a low interval is not really so much of an issue. It's really more like from a traffic manager side, it's really just more from a client side. There's a little bit of additional load if it needs to go ahead and do a DNS lookup on a frequent basis. I think 6 seconds is pretty good, but I probably wouldn't say like make it a day or anything like that. I would probably make it say like make it an hour or something like that at the
Yeah,
maximum. But
3,600 is.
That's fine.
Is it? Yes.
Well, just now, please. So yeah, the less I guess the better in some cases, because you want things to be to be actually expired as soon as possible, so that the new resource can be accessed.
And you didn't think of, instead of enable disabling, just changing the priority from 1 to 5 or something? And just leave it, so if the one goes up belly. Up
Yeah, so
and the health monitor fails, you've already got the production one still there.
So you can either leave a priority. So in that case, if you have everything as priority, a lot of it acts as a lot balanced, yes, when one is not active, just goes. But we want to just be just one at a time. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I'm Marco Vegan. Thank you for the presentation today. I have a quick question regarding more how this traffic manager maybe they can impact in specific sectors that are highly regulated, for instance, finance or health sector. Maybe do you see any risks in terms of compliance when this traffic manager, maybe the data sovereignty, when the data needs to be, even when the data is not stored offsite, maybe just the traffic? Do you see any risk in terms of compliance with high regulated sectors and traffic manager, or what strategy maybe this company is or no?
The website's on.
It does not inspect anything happening via HTTP request.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Full DNS.
just DNS, just like a road sign. It just tells you, go this way. So it doesn't know anything about it.
Okay.
It's pretty good, yeah. It's all just for a small team, I guess. And if you want to lower the cost down, so it's much cheaper, less complexity.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
So for those of you that are thinking of doing a presentation, this group here, there's alcohol involved. So
I don't drink alcohol though. Is that alcohol? Hey, it's okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, yes. Okay.
So what do you normally do as a health monitor? Just the 200 OKs?
Yeah.
You do something like a stream check or something like that?
No, yeah, the best way, I guess, as I said earlier, is to make sure you ensure your health also. Check the dependencies if none of them is broken. So you want to make sure everything works really well. Don't just send back like 200 or something.
But
I was going to actually just say, if anyone's keen to help out in a future session, let us know. We're keen for people to help out. Yeah. So
I'm too far away from the coalface.
come on, Ray.
My organisation's gone off to AWS, so as much as I
We can
try,
bring it back.
as much as I,
Bring it
oh,
Yeah, very well.
tell me about that.
It's easy.
I got my organization back to Azure.
They're moving an exchange server up there, and I said, "There's issues you haven't done." Oh, they've got their default route going off, so it doesn't come back. And we use express routes. AWS doesn't allow egress SMTP to public IPs by default. Azure